I am a magician. Right. And when you look at me, you probably think, it's not very much in common that this woman has with, let's say, David Copperfield. Well, not really, not really. Well, sex and gender, for a start, that is something that differ us. And I presume that's one of the key factors that influences the way we perform our magic. Because the magic that David does is the magic usually performed by man. I'm not in the possession of the dazzling, beautiful and radiant smile that David Copperfield has. Not really, that I believe it opens a lot of doors. Well, David has also a lot of people. He's got a team. Hundreds of people that work for him to make his shows look the way they do. I work alone. I sometimes invite people to join me, but I'm definitely a lone wolf, or a she-wolf. But there's one thing that we have in common with David Copperfield. We work with reality. Reality is the substance that we work with. Although we have two totally different approaches, because you see, what David does, he stages tricks, right? And he performs certain illusions of supernatural, seemingly impossible feats using natural means. So what he basically does is he creates reality that is not really true. And he wants you to believe that this is true. I don't do that. I take bits and pieces of my reality, that is of course a part of a common shared reality, and then I connect them, and then I disconnect them, then I stir them, and then I mix them, and then I agitate them, and then I compose them and decompose them. And while doing that, I sweat, and then I cry, and then I smile, I laugh, I jump, I go manic depressive, because you see, I go and I do create. That's what's called creative process. Because my magic is art, and I am an artist. And the reality that I want to talk to you about is the reality of the beginning of 2014. And my reality at that time was pretty scary. It was actually not inviting at all, because my father was on his deathbed. He had been sick for a long time. And we knew it was the moment, those were the last moments that we had with him before he makes that transition. And my mother, because my father was dying at that time, my mother was going really radical. She was going right. She started to be a faithful listener of a radio Mary, that you probably know what it is, living in this country. So she went totally fundamental. My husband was going through a middle life crisis, and the only thing that I could do at that time was to pray for him, not to spend our lifetime savings on a new Porsche or some sort of sex industry workers, twice younger than himself. And my daughter, well, being a daughter of a feminist obliges you to make your own personal independent decisions. And this is what she did at that time. At the age of 9, she decided that the femininity symbol that she would strive for was Barbie. So in the middle of that, as you can see, all I wanted to do at that time was to run away from my reality. But I decided to change it. And in the middle of all that, an invitation came. An invitation to go to a doctor's. It was the first invitation that I received at that time. To go to a doctor's for a regular checkup. And because my menstrual circle started to play tricks at that time, I said, well, that's a really good thing. I'll go to the doctors and check what's wrong with me. So I went to the doctors, and he looked at me and he said, well, you're not getting any younger. And I said, well, I know. Well, that menstrual circle of yours, well, it's a bit funny, isn't it? And I said, yes, it is. Because you see, that's what we called a premenopausal syndrome. And I was like, wow, but I'm only 44. And he said, yeah. It can take 5 years, it can take 10 years, it can even take 15 years, but you're going there. And you're not getting any younger. And I said, oh God, that means that I'm growing old. And of course we know that we're growing old, right? We do it every day, we know that. But there is that moment that you realize that very clearly, that that's the fact. And you have to come about it somehow. So after that invitation, another invitation came. And it was an invitation from a Baltic Gallery of Contemporary Art for me to go to the north, to go to a small place and to engage a local community to do an art project. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I just want to run away. So I said goodbye to my father. I promised him to come back as often as I could. I left my husband to his things, to his new motor fascination and new sexual experiences that he was going to encounter. And I took my daughter and 2 suitcases and a stock of Barbie dolls, and off we went. And this is the moment that when I think of myself at that time, this is the moment that I very often remember that scene from a movie Chocolate. I don't know if you remember that. There is this, yeah, right, there is this Juliette Binoche, right, with a daughter on the right and a suitcase in her left hand, right, going against that sly northern wind to change the life of a small village, a totally fundamental, very conservative small village in France, and she changed the life of the village totally upside down. Well, I am not David Copperfield, I am not Juliette Binoche, and I didn't change the life of the place that I was invited to. But the place changed me. And, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to meet women. And I wanted to talk to old women. I wanted to know what it is like to grow old. What is it like to become an old woman? What does it feel like? What does it smell like? What is it to make that transition? Because you see, there are 2 points of transition when you're a woman. The first one, when you become a woman, you stop being a girl, you get your period. And another one, when you stop having it. And so, imagine that place of Ustka, right? Northern part of Poland, close to the sea, beautiful, very small, tiny. 16,000 people population off-peak, right? 13% of unemployment, as far as I remember. And so young people gone, totally gone from the place, right? Trying to find a better life somewhere else in Poland, trying to find some sort of employment. And very small school children and old people, right? And the church tower as a reference point, the highest reference point, both in a physical and in a metaphorical sense. And me, a fighting feminist, who wants to talk about periods, who wants to talk about vaginas, who wants to talk about growing old and what it means to be old, to lose your periods and to trying to find your new identity. What is it like? So I knocked from door to door, trying to find some women who would like to discuss those things with me, who would like to show me what it means really to be old. And I looked and I looked and I searched and I searched and I couldn't find that many. But I found some women there. And they changed my life. And I very much believe that I changed theirs. And I would like you to meet my teachers and my sisters and my best friends, my mothers and my grandmothers. So, where we start with Stasia. Right. So, this is Stasia. Stasia was the oldest. She was 76 when I met her. Right. It's not a very good quality photograph. Could you turn back a bit? All right. That's still Stasia. Right. So, can I get my mic back? Right. So, this is Stasia. Oh, no, this is not Stasia. Poor Stasia. Right, so this is Stasia, right? Stasia, 76 years old, right? Stasia. And a wife of an ex-wife of a soldier, of a general, who never withdrew from using violence when he got back home to his wife and 2 small children. And who went drunk pretty often, sometimes 3 weeks in a row, coming back home. And when she stood up to him and she said, "I want to divorce you," he looked at her, he said, "You? You'll never be bold enough. You're just a woman." Well, she did. She did divorce him. First in her family, first in generations. So that's Stasia. Let's move on to Zosia. Right. Well, Zosia wanted to be a circus artist. Well, what kind of a job is that? She was the first one, the first girl. And then she had 4 brothers. So what did she do? Instead of doing splits, she looked after the brothers. Of course she did. And then she was a great wife and housewife and the mother of 3. And then, when she retired, she started to do yoga. And then she became an artist. So it was amazing to see this 73-year-old lady doing headstands and splits and all those things, and her body stretching in all different directions. Well, that's Zosia. Let's move on to Krysia. Well, Krysia was taught when she was a little girl that she had to be very respectful and dutiful, and she was supposed to be a very responsible person. And that she was supposed to be an engineer. So she went, although she didn't like science at all, she went to do engineering and she became an engineer. And only when she retired, she got back to the passion of her life and she started to paint. Because she had always wanted to paint. And she painted, she learned how to paint, she painted, she was a beautiful painter, and then she started to teach other women how to paint. The other women who wanted to learn how to paint. Let's move on to Halinka. Right. Halinka, the only feminine identity that Halinka knew for a very long time was that of a mother, because she was left a widow when she was very young, and she had 2 sons, and she was like everybody. She was a mother and a father and a teacher. She was a helper and a breadwinner. She was everybody and everything to her sons, but she totally forgot about herself. She never looked after her own needs. She never did anything for herself because, well, she was a mother. So only when she retired, she decided to do something for herself, and now she takes life with her both hands and tries to squeeze everything out of it as much as possible, and that's Halinka. and the last, Irenka. And Irena was expected to be a boy. So when she was born a girl, she was a bit of a surprise to her parents. And so much so that for the first 5 years of her life, they used a male equivalent of her name, and they called her Irek instead of Irena. And she learned how to be a boy, but she never learned how to be a girl, and that she never learned how to be a woman. And only when she turned 40, she said to herself, okay, enough is enough. I want to learn how to be a woman. Otherwise, I'll just go totally schizophrenic. And now she's learning how to be a woman and what it means to be a woman. Right, so those were the women that I did my project with. And when you look at it, on the one hand, we did nothing in particular, nothing really. There's nothing that you can possibly feed your reasoning mind with, because we met in a totally different level. We met with our space that we built in our hearts. So what we did was we met, we talked, we sang, we did different things together. We released our traumas and we talked about what it meant for us to be first a girl, then a young teenage woman, then a woman, then a mature woman, then an old woman. We shared our experiences, we talked about our secrets, the secrets that sometimes were talked about for the first time in our lives. Sometimes we did funny things, like the one that we did for the 8th of March, International Women's Day, when we decided to bake those about 400 cupcakes in the form of little vaginas, like the ones that you can see here. And we went and we just gave them to people on a Sunday. In front of the church, the people who got out of the church. This was what we did. But imagine that. Imagine Stasia and Zosia and Halinka looking like a possible listener of the Radio Maria, going with trays with little vagina cupcakes, saying, a little cupcake for International Women's Day? Why don't you have a little treasure? That's what we did. Right. Right, that's us. Mm-hmm. So that was it. We, to sum up and to finish our project with something really beautiful, beautifully feminine, we did what's called Anasuromai. And Anasuromai is an ancient ritual of an old communities of people who believed very much that the power is within a woman because she has a vagina. And a vagina is a place, is a gate, is a symbol of power and strength, because that's the gate through which we go and we come to the world. And we performed that. And when you ask me what old age is and what it means to be an old woman, I still cannot give you any answer, because I still don't know. But I don't know, not because I don't know, but because I don't know how to squeeze this huge entity into such a small verbal concept. But I know one thing. I'm not afraid of it anymore. I am not.